And we're live. Welcome to Buck Spout. We talk punk, comics, media, anything kind of punk adjacent. I'm Eric, John, and we have Travis Gibb with us. Travis is the writer and creator of Granite State Punk, which is on Kickstarter right now. So we're going to be talking about that book. Its ties to the occult, and anything in between. It's the very beginning of October, so it's good timing for having
Spooky
Travis
time.
come on and talk this stuff. So welcome, Travis.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm partly awake right now. I've had a punk festival this weekend where I was tabling, so I was a sponsor of, so it was amazing.
You had a good time? Everybody was good?
Yeah, just getting home at like 2:30 in the morning is a lot for me.
Yeah, it's a little rough. Yeah.
Did you sell well?
Yeah, it did pretty good. It was it's my return basically since like COVID, really. Like I did a punk rock flea market right before COVID and I loved it. I used to do concerts before that. And it's one of those things where when people see you at a show, I was doing them weekly for a while, or every other week or something. So it was like they might come and chat with you about music, and then they show up the next week and they chat with you a little bit more, and then eventually they buy stuff. Like you kind of build that. And so it's I think that the books will probably sell better as I do more of those things. But the funny thing was anything that I had at my table that had an F-bomb on it, like these coasters, don't fuck up my table.
Yeah.
People liked those. And then my button, which actually is directly from Blister, but they didn't necessarily know it. My fuck everyone button. Those, like the fuck everyone button, everybody loved. I'm going to have to do some more with that. So it was a good time. The boll weevils were amazing. They're so high energy. That is like so not me. So I'm envious when I see that. It's happened everywhere on the stage. It was amazing. But no, it's just nice to get out to something like that, even if it was way past my bedtime.
Yeah, but that live music, it just really invigorates after all this time that we've been stuck inside and everything. It's such a nice feeling to get out there and see the other fans connecting with it too. So totally get it.
It's fun to see that there's still a scene out there too. Like everybody's talking about other bands that are on the scene, and like I don't know, people always want punk is dead is always a thing. Everybody always wants to talk about that, and music is dead and nothing's been good since the insert decade. So it's just nice to see everything's so live. There's all these young bands out there. It's nice to see the old bands have that energy and that longevity. I mean, Bull Weevils have been around since the late 80s. So, it was amazing.
I know it's crazy to see some of these bands that are, I'm pushing 50. So to see bands that are my age, like jumping off stage and like landing on their knees. I've actually had conversations with bands before and said, like the lead singer of the Proletariat, I was like, you just landed off the stage and I would have been dead. I was like, I don't know. Like, he's like, yes, basically the routine has changed a little bit. There's a little less alcohol, a lot more Advil in my routine. So yeah.
Ibuprofen's my go-to.
Yep.
I'm throwing together a punk rock show for the Granite State Punk Black Caravan release. So we're gonna do one on April 15th, right after MegaCon. We're still kind of putting it all together, and it's so interesting because I'm a marketing guy, but so many of those things don't work for punk shows, right? Like I get a sponsor. The sponsor's like, hey, I got $5,000. I was like, I don't know how to spend $5,000 at a punk show. I mean, I'm sure I can. Give me a minute, but what do you do, and how do you make it special? And, and what do they care, right? Like, I'm going to do a punk show. I'm going to have like 5 bands. I hired a local punk rock league. We're going to get people like, I don't know if you know them, the Supervillains and some Florida-based, punk rock scene, affordable. But we want to add the comic as like an add-on and all these things. I was like, I remember being a punk. I wouldn't give a shit about your comic, regardless if it's a comic-related punk rock show. Like, I don't care. Like,
it helps. It helps like between
money for nothing.
Yeah, you've already spent your money and you're done. I mean, that is the weird thing too, because I'm selling stuff amongst like people who are out there busting their ass on stage.
Right.
So like I'm hoping they're doing good too. Like it's, but it's fun like between songs and stuff. This fest that we did this weekend, there was literally, and they were really good about it. There was like 10-minute setup times between bands,
Right.
And the show at the end was about a half hour off, which is really good for 16 bands before the last band.
Hell yeah, yeah,
yeah, that was amazing. But like at previous shows that I've done, there might be almost 30 minutes in between, so people are kind of wandering around. So they'll come out and they'll start just kind of picking up your books and looking through them. So it's always nice to have a read-only copy up front.
Sure.
Yeah. But and then when you start talking music and stuff, and like that connection, a lot of times you'll see it's weird. So one big difference I know from a punk fest and that sort of thing to a comic show is that when somebody comes around and they're a comic show and they kind of glance at your stuff and they're like, I'll be back around later, they're probably not coming back.
Right.
There's the rare person, but
you don't want to carry this around.
Right. Yep. But at a concert, like, so we got there a couple hours after it started, about 2 in the afternoon. The show went until 1 in the morning, and people don't buy a book and carry it around a concert for 10 hours. So you're literally like out there just kind of as a billboard just for, half of a day. And then at the end, people kind of trickle by on their way out. Right. The pins and stuff like that, those would sell during the day. But
yeah, I was going to say stuff you can throw in your pocket.
Yeah. So I learned early on to not be discouraged by, nobody's going to buy my stuff. Like stay till the end. But yeah, it was a good time. So with that, we could start talking some Granite State Punk.
Sure.
Here, you want to give your elevator pitch?
Yeah. Hold on. I got to talk to my daughter for a second. She's playing The Simpsons in the background.
Oh.
Okay, can you do that somewhere else?
We don't want to get a copyright strike.
All I hear is The Simpsons. Dun, 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 dun. And no one's more punk than Bart Simpson. I mean, I understand, but just not appropriate. Yeah, so Granite State Punk, we're doing issue 2 right now, but the premise of Granite State Punk is in New Hampshire, there's this old man on the mountain. So it's this face. It's on all the symbols, on everything you see in New Hampshire. I'm born and raised in that area. This is a punk rock kid from that town who, when the face falls off, finds out he's like the head king witch warlock. He doesn't know because he drank and partied in his youth and didn't want anything to do with that life. So now he's trying to figure out how he survives in this world. Issue 1 already came out earlier this year. We got signed by Black Caravan / Scout Comics. Now we're doing Granite State Punk 2. But they are one-shots. They're individual stories. You don't need one to read the other. This one's about him trying to figure out what he wants to do. The end of last issue, he became straight edge. We're going to see whether or not that worked out for him. The book's called Breaking Edge, so you may be able to figure that out yourself. But it figures this wild thing. So let me tell you about this. Here's the real true life story about the premise of this comic. So the first witch trial in New Hampshire happened in Hampton Beach. It was this old lady. What she would do is she would yell at people because she hated people. It was like, I hope you and your family die on a boat accident. They would. And like she would curse people's land. No like spells or anything like that. She would just randomly curse people. They tried her as a witch, sent her to Boston. She lived there for 20 years. And remember, this time period, like 20 years is a long time. Boston's like, no, we're not taking care of her anymore. They send her back. They then build her a hut in the middle of the woods, far away from civilization, and she dies. What's rumored to be starvation because she was so old she couldn't make it to the town. Anyways, when they find she's dead, a whole bunch of bad things happen in the town. They get scared. They unbury her, put a stake through her heart, and bury her back and leave her there. That's the true life story. That's not me adding a fictional tint to it.
Yeah, that's a fun foundation there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I was actually reading a bit about that because I used to do Strange Tales Weekly TV show. So like when I get a crumb of something like that, I get very interested in the backstory and I start doing some research. And there was actually 2 witch trials that year in New Hampshire. The other one's not as interesting, except for that the other one, the woman actually won like the trials, and actually like countersued, and like it was pretty wild because those witch trials, like Salem especially,
Right.
like are so tragic. Like it's usually somebody doesn't like somebody, so they call them a witch, and the next thing you know, their life is hell, and they're being burned with a stake through them. Like, it's horrible.
We tend to forget that we always look to the founding fathers and all this crap, but before that, we had the Pilgrims. They were literally the holy zealots that England. What, you want to leave and find a new world? Yeah, please go ahead, take a boat. How big of a boat you want? We gladly get rid of you. Like we tend to forget that the Northeast is full of these crazy zealots that were too crazy for England, and they sent them on a boat.
Yeah, and then those stories are just so tragic. Like even the lady that yours is based on, like, right. I mean, she sounds like a bit of a nut job, but
right.
What a horrible life she ended up with.
Yeah, there was no just that things happened, but as far as any research that I've done, she just yelled at people.
That's right. And she mostly just sounded like a really shitty neighbor.
Right. And her name's Goody Cole too, which is extra offensive. Like, I mean, you're gonna be called a witch if your name's Goody Cole.
Yeah, she is really excellent foundation for a story.
So, and a few years ago, like 20 years ago, they actually decided, hey, just for the record, she is a Hampton resident in good standing, and we no longer consider her a witch. I mean, that does a lot of good in like 2020,
right.
2000.
Well, if you don't want her coming back to kill you later in life, I mean, I've seen that movie. You want to make sure you're covering your bases.
Just in case she actually is.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
just double checking. You're okay. Yeah.
We're all clear. So one thing I thought was really cool. I don't remember if I saw you say it on a show or read it or you even mentioned it to me, but working with Patrick Bauermeyer, that's how you say it, right?
Brewmeyer.
Yeah. On the first Granite State Punk, and he's again back for the second one, right?
Yeah.
I remember he was kind of like a bucket list artist for you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've ever read his stuff prior, like it's so dark and gritty and very Sean Murphy-esque, but with enough of a style to go, you're influenced by, but not. Yes. Which is great. And I wanted to get him into the light. So, like, if you look at my stuff versus, can't even think of the name of the book right now. I don't know why.
Discordia? It's actually
Discordia.
That's on Bad Bug, which John actually works with.
Yep.
Okay. All of his stuff is really dark. Like it's super dark lines, all outside, dark, which he does great with. I really wanted to go, if you lighten that up and put it in a modern setting, does it work? And in my opinion, he killed it. Everyone in New Hampshire who knows that town, when I showed it, when I just went to Granite State Con a couple weeks ago, loved it. And we're like, I know that area. I know that because he's really good at grabbing those references. And he's great to work with. Super fun. We had like 4 arguments during the book, and all of them I ended up being wrong. And that never happens when you're paying the bill, right?
Right.
But all the time he was like, oh, I did this because of this, and this. And I was like, damn it, you were good. I hate that.
Yeah. No, his style is great. It definitely has that chaotic feel that you'd want for a punk rock kind of book anyway. And I think, like you said, some of the darks really worked well. And some of like the energy of the magic, like the purple magic and everything against that kind of darker backdrop really worked well visually.
And he's a scene kid. I mean, he loves punk rock music. You know, he's
part
of it. You know, he believes in it. You know, we talked about music very early on and our influences. And that's why, if you notice, like he's not wearing any of the garb, like he doesn't have tons of patches, because I really wanted to represent anybody who loves that. Because people get so mad, like the Sex Pistols or the Ramones, or all punk rock is all about like making sure that you know who you don't like. It's very important. It's more important than telling who you do like. So I intentionally try to do it. And in the first issue, I really made punk rock more of the state of mind than the music part of it. This in issue 2, we deal with a little bit more of the music. We have a punk rock show. We have all that. But in the first one, I really wanted to show, for me, punk rock is a state of mind. It's a hang out with friends who want to solve the fucking world, but we have no idea how. No, let me revise that. We absolutely know how, but we're going to do no effort in doing Right? We can tell you how to solve all these problems, but we don't really want to do it.
This kind of describes Generation X as a whole.
Right.
Yep, just leave us alone. We'll leave you alone.
But we could do it if we tried.
Yeah.
Right. We want to know, we could solve this, but it's not going to happen.
Oh, that's great. So the locals reacted well to it?
Oh, yeah. They loved it. It sold better than any other single issue. Obviously, it was at Granite State Con at Granite State. It was funny because everyone around me was telling me how they weren't selling well. And I just had to be quiet, because I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I'm going out of town. I'm taking all your money. But they loved it. They loved the patches. Like anyone who's punk rock, they love the garb more than they love the book. Right? They're like, so I have to buy a book to get this patch? Yeah, I want that. You don't even know. If you had this patch, it would mean nothing to you.
Yeah, that's so weird. People buy. This weekend, I did pretty well on my blister turntable slip mats.
Right.
And it's Blister and Harv and the Blister logo, and it's an awesome piece of art. Like, I love the art on it. Like, it's really striking. But it's weird to me that people will buy that, never having seen Blister or caring who these guys on it are.
But like you said, it's a beautiful piece of art that's on it. I think I've got one of those too, and it's anybody that's a music nerd and an art nerd, that's a nice, easy way for them to break into it and spend a little bit of money, but not sure if they want to commit. So
yeah, I have a Blister enamel pin that also does well with it's just him on a guitar. So if you play guitar and you're walking by, you're like, oh, that's cool. So it's cool that there can be crossover like that, but it is a weird thing. I know what you mean.
Yeah, especially when I had the fictional band. I had the fictional band Yankee Swappers, and I had the shirt made, but I didn't really highlight it in the book at all. And people were, why I was talking about it and sharing, that, hey, we're going to build this. If we do another issue, we're going to make them a big part of it. Everyone's like, oh, I want that shirt. I want that sticker.
Yeah.
It's a fictional band that I don't even mention. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well,
so we had to make that a prominent part. So it's wild, the things that the punk rock community resonates with. But I just find a lot of punk rockers who read the book and really could relate to the characters. It reminds them a little bit of SLC Punk, but also like with a modern telling. The only thing I've ever got crap for is the theater reference in there. They're like, that breaks it. I was like, no, man. Like, a lot of these punk rocks are theater kids growing up. Like, I'm telling you.
If I was going to give you crap for anything, it'd be censoring the first F-bomb.
That is the only thing I've ever agreed with Chuck on when he did that. I was like, you're right. Censoring the first one doesn't make any sense.
And, it does make sense if it's going to be like a preview online and you want to get a general audience maybe or something. But
I promise the Scout one will have a full fuck in there.
Fantastic.
We're
going to hold you to that.
No, it's already done. It's already been discussed.
Well, all right. There we go.
But this is a weird Kickstarter for me because the first one that I have the publisher, so they had to approve it. There's all these extra rules to do it.
Yeah.
And the worst part is they have all these rules, but there's no guarantee that they're even going to do this issue.
Oh.
Right, because it's only a one shot. That's all my contract signs up. But they have the option, first right of refusal.
Interesting. Yep.
I'm sure they'll do it. I'm sure they're interested in doing it. But as of right now, it's the thing.
Oh, that's wild. So how close to Rochester did you grow up?
I grew up in Rochester.
In Rochester, okay.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Jetpack Comics and Royal Pizza House, like, so I come from the Chicagoland area. Pizza is near and dear to Chicagoans. And then there's New York pizza. There's Detroit pizza. Like, if you were going to describe this pizza, how would you describe it? And I'll follow up after you describe it.
So the pizza is kind of an institution. So that there's nothing special and everything special about this pizza. It's super greasy. It's you can tell that you shouldn't be eating it every bite. But what's special about it is it went away a long time ago. So this guy, it's a brothers from it. One of the brothers climbed Mount Washington and died. He froze to death.
Oh, wow.
So growing up, I would also often call the pizza place and go ask for a frozen Louis and Mount Washington special. Not funny.
No.
But eventually he closed it down. But apparently this guy is like wealthy. And he just leaves it there. and goes in periodically, cleans it up, but it still says come back one day. And we're looking at like 30 years now. Like it's been gone for.
Oh wow. So
when
you had it, you were a kid.
Yeah. 30 years is probably exaggerated, probably 25, but at least, but it's been there forever. And it's kind of an institution of like, it's a great piece of land that continues to be paid for in the area, that everyone who knows that, like who's in Rochester, knows Royals Pizza. And if you're not from Rochester, you don't know Royals Pizza, or you at least didn't grow up there, right? You came in after Royals was a thing. And then Jetpack Comics is a great comic store. Love those guys. We're actually talking about having me fly out for Free Comic Book Day, because that'll be about the time of the release. It comes out in like April, so May is
a good time. Yeah.
So we're coming out there, and I had to throw them in because I've watched them. I don't know if you know a lot about Rochester, but it's right next to Dover, where the Ninja Turtles are from.
Oh, okay.
So for me growing up, at my age, I'm 43. I saw the Ninja Turtles my whole life. Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird. I could go to little comic stores and they would draw and they would like greet fans and be really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then when I got to the point of making to like 18, 19, like, oh my God, look at this Image Comics. So for me, you just made an indie comic and you're going to make $1 million. Like that's what I learned. Yeah. Wasn't true, but yeah. So we have a lot of history there. We have a lot of Ninja Turtles history. We have all that stuff right in that area. So it's a very cool vibe, very cool comic area to do that stuff. We also have Joe Hill that lives very close to there, and he's always there doing signings. So it's a dope store. It's very, very huge, and I love it. And it's pretty dope.
I still have to make a road trip there. I'm actually in Western Massachusetts, so I see Rich Whittle talking about Jetpack all the time. So I'd love to make it up there at some point. And I live about 20 minutes away from Northampton, which is where Mirage Studios with the Turtles guys were. So yeah, great bunch of guys. I've met a bunch of those guys too. And yeah, just like you said, like seeing them as the gold standard for indie stuff back in the day, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, you should come to Free Comic Day. It's for Rochester. It's not just a like store event. Most Free Comic Day, it's just you go to the store, you get your signed copies, you leave. The town shuts down, and they actually have all the shops will have free comics. So you can go to each of the stores and all sorts of stuff, and then they'll have curators at various stores as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
You get to meet. It's more than just you can make a day event of it. And there's like a concert at night that they do, all sorts of really cool things.
Nice. I'll have to see if I can make that trip. That would be fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
That's awesome. One thing that I found fun reading the book also was one thing I've noticed in reading other punk-related books is little threads that kind of connect between them all. The carryover. Usually I notice them because they connect to something that I wrote. So one that pops up a lot is a band and their first crappy acts. Like in my book, they dress as dinosaurs for an act. And I've seen very similar having dressed for things. And John, what was that punk book that you recommended to me a few years ago?
Is it Chunks or
Chunks? Yeah. It's almost like I gotta say I wrote it in my novel before they did it. So I was like, because I felt when I read it, I was like, oh shit, I did that exactly. Like the scene is almost the exact same. Where they have to dress up as, I think it's as dinosaurs and Chunks too.
I can't remember. It's been a while since I read that, but I don't know if you've read it, Travis. But
I have not read Chunks. No.
It's by Matt Garvey. He's a UK writer, and
I know Mark.
He's
Garvey.
Fabulous. Yeah. It's just a
great.
Wonderful, really inappropriate humor kind of book, and it's just a ton of fun. They're the Pineapple Chunks. They're a little punk rock unit out of the UK.
So in reading Granite State Punk, there was a little commentary on the DARE program, and I was like, hey, I made a commentary on the DARE program. Like, it's just fun. Like because punk, the one thing about punk besides like the attitude is the realness. Like,
right.
It's generally really raw, and it's just super honest. And that's one thing that's drawn me to punk since I was a kid. And so I think it's fun seeing those nuggets pop up in different places because they're all things that we grew up with. Especially as Generation X and punk rock, but
so this book, I think I've said it in other interviews, but this book was super important to me. So I love all my books. I love Broke Down. I love Voodoo Nations. I love Cthulhu. I love all those. But every single one of those, I've had to make a compromise because of financial. It's just reality when you're making comics and you're at this level. Todd McFarlane wouldn't return my calls, so I had to go with somebody else. Rob Liefeld would return my calls. That was all. But anyways, so my grandmother died and left me a bunch of money. Some money. Don't be robbing me, people. It's all spent. It's all gone. And anyways, I wanted to do one book that really is the way I wanted to do it. So, and that was Granite State Punk. That's why I hired Patrick. He was a bucket list writer. I really wanted to get Patrick. I really wanted to create this perfect book And then wanted to write a love letter to New Hampshire. The face falling down really affected me. It really upset me that it's literally everywhere in the state. You can't go anywhere without seeing this. And they're just like, fuck it. Let's let it be down. Like, no, that's the things you fight for. Like, I don't understand. But then when I started writing it, because it really, the original concept of the book was a story that I heard here locally. It's this guy, he used to live at this house. He goes to this old lady's house and says, hey, I left a time capsule here when I was growing up, and we sold the house, but I'd like to get it. Can I bury it? I'm buried. She's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So he unburies it. He's like, oh, this isn't what I remember it looking like. Brings it to the old lady, and the old lady's like, that's my father's ashes.
Oh.
And he's like, ran. So that's the radio story. So I wanted to write that story, but in this story, they were going to be the bones part of the story where there's going to be a serial killer. He finds like, oh my God, there's a bunch of bodies here, and find out lady's a killer trying to murder the whole thing. And then myself just started coming through, like who I was and like what I'm angry about and like my voice. This is the closest to my like inner monologue that it is, because I have ADD and like attention, and I'm angry about stuff. I mean, if you follow me on Facebook, I'll randomly make rants like the DARE program, things that like frustrate me, that we live in a society that these things are right. So I really leaned into that. The story then changed from there and really became more about the mountain, the man on the mountain, and how face fell off and all that. And then as I've done too, the same thing. Hampton Beaches, I grew up. That's where I spent my summers and did stuff. So I wanted to reflect on that, from me playing Mortal Kombat to going to shows, to being straight edge, but not fully understanding what that meant, right? Like I wanted the X's on my arm, but I didn't necessarily want all the responsibility, right? When someone's like, oh, that's no sex too. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't get that memo. Where did I
sign up for that at all?
Show me where that is. So it really, so I really wanted to address that straight edge thing, and like the realness of it is, when we're young and we put those X's on our arms, like it was to make a statement. Like I'm trying to like not fit. I want to be so nonconformist, but we haven't lived enough to decide like that's a lifestyle, right? Right. So it was interesting. So I wanted to express a little bit of that. And I also wanted to express like the things that really upset me when I was growing up. I used to hate it that I have the big X's, and they'd be like, all right, we got to stamp you to say you're not going to drink. And I'm like, I've got the X's. Like, what more do you need? Like,
right.
And the people trying to push me to be formal, I was like, I'm fighting conformity here. What are you talking about? Why are you pushing me forward? Because we want to see the effing show. Oh, okay. So we compromise. So all that being said, this is probably the most personal book to me. And I think it shows in my writing. I think it shows in Patrick's art. Like, I think Patrick gets it too, the passion of it. Because I see it, like, he can tell that these characters are super important to me. So he emphasizes, how they look and act. And if I want them to be in a certain position, he like really adjusts to that. And I think that's really great.
That's awesome. So when it comes to the AA bookends, is there something in your life that clearly you're off the wagon? If that's
if I put the X in my hand now, does it count?
Well, it's funny because I was reading Voodoo Nations earlier today just to kind of prep, and I was like, oh, he's going straight edge, like with the characters in the first issue of that too. And I'm like, interesting. So there is a theme here going on.
There is a theme. They're unconnected though.
Yeah.
So my mom, when I was like 12 years old, decided to go into AA. And it kind of changed her whole trajectory. My dad was still a drug addict, and so it was wild trying to figure that out. So I've never been in AA, but I've had to go to tons of meetings with my mom, like as a kid, because I'm 12 years old. What are you going to do with me? So I'm watching them and watching these people, and watching how they don't care about each other, and like how here's the messed up thing about AA. So you go into AA to get better, right? But by doing so, and because it's in your mind the way the AA program works, you've got to develop all yourself into this instead of drink it. So your whole goal is to probably fix your family. You're not going to spend any time with your family because you're going to these damn meetings all the time. So it's this vicious circle. Yeah, you're better, but try to tell that to a 12-year-old kid who has promised he's going to get his mom back, but his mom's at a meeting every night of the week, right? Like, so I got a little anger about that I'm still addressing. Yeah. Years later, I got into the church scene, and the church group that I had, because again, I can't conform in any circle, was a hardcore screamcore metal band called Sleeping Giants. The band in Voodoo Nations is a real band, Tom Green, and a lot of them are straight edge. So that's where that came from. And it correlates with he's drinking later, and he was straight edge. So alcoholism is a big thing that I talk about in a lot of my books, because it did affect me various ways growing up, and still kind of affects me in different ways, But yeah. So that's where all that comes from.
So earlier I was thinking about some punk rock things that relate to like some punk music and stuff to talk about or think about. And one thing I was gonna ask everybody if they had a particular punk song or any music really that like ties to the occult that they like. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to ask it. I was going to send it ahead of time because I thought that was one of those things that could stump somebody. People sitting on screen thinking for like 10 minutes about song. But in doing so, I was sitting there thinking about what would I say, and I came up with Rancid's Django song, and in it he sings because it was just kind of like the imagery in it was Django, you drag your coffin around all around town just like a dead man does, and like every time I've heard this song, like there's been visuals in my head that go along with it that were pretty cool. But then when I was thinking about the song a little further, because you listen to songs all the time and you listen to albums, you don't really think too deeply about the lyrics sometimes. And I realized in some of the lyrics that he's actually singing about like drug use and carrying your like if you're doing this heroin and things, like he lists a few things in the songs, and you're basically just dragging your coffin around town like with you, like that's where you're gonna end up. And so then when I was thinking about that, then it hit me, like the AA thing hit me, and I was it all started tying together in this weird way. So it's kind of cool. I don't know if you guys have a song off the top of your head. You don't have to answer that because it's kind of on the spot, but it was just kind of something I wanted to mention that kind of came up when I was thinking about this earlier.
I mean, there's tons, right? I mean,
there's so many almost that I think it's hard to think about them.
I can think of more specific bands that kind of deal with that, as like horror pops and creep show and things like that definitely have more of a horror and occult theme to them. But yeah, a specific song off the top of my head, I'm horrible on the spot, unfortunately.
Well, and horror punk is like a genre, right?
Right.
The Misfits were kind of in there, the Blitz Kids, all that, Yep. So you got, that's kind of its own subgenre. And then I even think of like movies like SLC Punk, like in the middle of it, they've got the witches and they're doing the seance and the stuff.
Right.
And it's so very punk rock, right? Like I remember being a kid, being in random situations, talking to people about how they believe in ghosts or how they can astral project. And like me being a young kid going, please tell me more, like super fascinated, studying it for weeks and going, I don't give a shit about any of this. I don't know why I'm studying it so hard.
Every time I'm
because at some point
scrolling through and Joe Rogan's talking about like his experiences on mushrooms, I'm like that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you first.
I was just going to say, going on the music thing again, I was just kind of wondering what would you say Zeke's favorite band would be? I mean,
well, Zeke's favorite band is the fictional band Yankee Swappers.
So let's say, like, what kind of feel do they have? What would you say?
They would be a late Clash when they started to like add a little bit of the 80s flair to it.
Yep.
Even though I prefer the earlier Clash, he would kind of like I think he's kind of I think Zeke is one of those people who like loves punk, loves the music, but the music he's so punk that it can't define him, so he refuses to let it define him. He's one of those guys who's like the very difficult punk guy to like hone down, because if you think you get him, he has to flip the script because he's one of those guys, right?
Being in New Hampshire, that makes me think of the lead singer from the Queers.
Right. Right.
He is. I can't think of his name, but he is. Anytime
Joe
I see anything, yeah, there you go. Yep. He every time you see him talk or hear him, he's like just like this grumpy man that's like against everything.
Right.
What's the one song like? I hate everyone, or so like it's kind of in them, anyways.
Yeah, they're 100% sarcasm. So
yeah, it's so crazy that he hasn't got canceled.
Yes, that's true too.
His tongue is firmly in cheek the whole time. I'm hoping that's why he can kind of slide through on a lot of it. But yeah, I totally get it. There's a couple songs that are you're like, but yeah, they just have such a good sense of humor and sarcasm that I would hope for the same reason like Dead Milkmen have that kind of sense of humor to it, that I would hope that's what carries them through a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the punk scene, like when you really like think about it, it's so funny. It's by the time these people make it, they're starting to get in their 30s and they're talking about high school problems.
Yeah.
This doesn't even relate to you anymore, guys.
Yeah, that's why I appreciate some bands like Bad Religion and stuff that actually like take on issues and things like that more societal. Like I love a good like love song and like dating song and things like that, but most of the ones that I listen to are the ones that I listened to when I was a kid going through that stuff, you know. Travis, so between like Broke Down and Expired and now with Voodoo Nations and with Granite State Punk, you've got quite a range in writing. How do you pick your projects? Like, how do you decide what you're going to go after and what they all have to? I mean, there's the general indie audience, but all of those kind of have their own sub audiences. What's that like?
That's a great question. I don't know. To be completely honest, I kind of pick things that I'm interested in and trying to figure out the right vibe, right? So Broke Down in 4 Dead Bodies, I really wanted to write a crime. I really wanted to write dialogue that really pops and really stimulates you, because I think my strength, because I come from a screenplay writing, is my dialogue is really strong. And then I flip the script and go, all right, well, let's get really into like deep weeds and like with Voodoo Nations, because Voodoo Nations, like if you have a religious tent, that book has a lot of double meanings and stuff. Let me show you that. And then Broke Down was like, let's try it. And then Granite State Punk was like, let's mix those two things together, like, and see if it sticks. And then as I've learned, I've realized like nobody wants regular people. Like it sucks. Like I love if I just have regular people, like they're less interested. So I've got to have these monsters, or I got to have something cool visually, because I'm not going to go to the booby books, right? So I got to have the coolest things. So that's kind of my vibe on that. But I try to have something to say. That's kind of my new thing. You know, when Broke Down, I didn't really have anything to say. I just want to tell a cool story. Now, like everything has to say something. So Voodoo Nation's a something. It's about a guy who's like going off the deep end and a wife who's fighting for him. Like that's the sub thing. Granite State Punk is about alcoholism and how it's not just a quick fix. You know, what does that look like? And then being angry at the society that made this situation and how you deal with that. Expired is actually owned by somebody else. He kind of created the universe, but I wrote it. But it's all about like aging and like what that's about. So I'm trying to add a lot of these extra stuff to build it. We've got Coins of Judas coming out. That's why I'm wearing my Bands of Bard shirt. And that's kind of just really playing on religion and what that looks like and kind of the stuff and superhero fun, like just having fun with comics. Because I think we miss that. I think I miss that when I'm telling all these big stories, right?
Right. I found that as I've gotten older, my comics tend to be more about me and my thoughts and more like therapeutic than anything. I used to, when I first started doing comic stuff, it was superhero parody stuff, and then I got into the sci-fi stuff right before, while I was working on Blister, and now it's pretty much become therapy for me. It's cheaper than therapy. As expensive as comics are, it's cheaper than therapy. So,
well, and you know when it works, right? So that there's a part in Broke Down where I stop and I'm like, you're bored, and I address the audience and you're bored. And so many people have come to me like, I was absolutely bored in that spot. I was like, I know, like I get it. And like I've always done this, like even like Broke Down, I've always wanted to show like I've studied this my whole life. I know how to tell a story. Like Broke Down, I made it like Pulp Fiction to start on purpose and then changed the script as it went. And like, see, you thought it was Pulp Fiction, but I'm just making you familiarize. But then I realized how stupid that is because no one knows you. So they're just like, oh, it's a rip-off of Pulp Fiction. I want to read that. Shit. Right?
I get that a lot when I go to comic shows, like those pitches of you like my comic if you like this and this.
Right.
They don't work for me because one example I think of, like a handful of years ago, somebody pitched something as being like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and something else. And when they said that, I was like, oh, that's right. Buffy had that series that was really supposed to be really good. And I, instead of looking at their book, I went on Amazon and I ordered Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I know it does work for a general audience in some, if you do it right, but it's one thing that's like never really worked for me.
No, I agree. Just trying to write something that, I mean, I want to do this long term. I'm going to do anything to stay in it. So, I'm going to do it myself because anything can inspire people. I mean, Eric, you inspired my family last night, like for real. I was talking to my daughter. She's like, you just found out she was watching The Simpsons. I was like telling my wife about the plot, one of the plot points in your book, about The Simpsons. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because I think it's a part of the book. And she's like, what? Somebody did that to Mr. Burns? Yeah. Who did it? Yeah, right. And she then spent like a little bit and pausing and running out and telling me it's Smithers. He said he did it. Like, that's hilarious. Homer's being arrested. Yeah, keep watching. There's more. No, Homer. Like, I promise you, there's more.
Oh, that's so funny. That's great. So you're the Orange Cone Productions.
Yeah.
Or is that Orange Cone Productions? I just wanted to say that's like, as far as brands go out there in indie comics, that is like one brand. Like I watch what you do, and you probably even see every now and then I might steal something that you did because I think you're doing a great job with building that brand. Like there's a handful of people that I watch for branding, but most of them are outside of comics. Like you're like the one that I'm like, when I didn't know about Substack, and I liked what you were doing in Substack, so I started looking into it and I really liked their system. So I've been trying to use that pretty regularly. And
yeah, it's definitely a very well-known brand for sure. I see it all the time. And one thing I was looking at earlier, I was looking at your website. I noticed that you have the store that has a lot of the physical copies, but I didn't notice any digital. Do you have any place to buy digitally?
I did until Comixology went crazy.
Yes. Okay. Say no more.
Yeah. I do need to fix that and get it. It's so weird because my goal is always to sell these properties, right? I never wanted to be a publisher. I know I'm good at it. Like I get that, but I think that someone who's a good editor, right? They can edit. They can edit anything. But if their dream is to be a writer, the more they edit, for the longer time, eventually they're just going to become an editor, right? You look at Chuck. Chuck loves to write, but he struggles with it because he's like, I'm always throwing this editor hat, and that's where I make the bucks. So same thing with me. Like I want to be a writer. So even though I've got all these things publishing-wise, I want to be a writer. That's what I want to be known for. I don't want to be doing. That being said, like there's always a new idea, right? Like I promise you next year, this time, you'll be yelling at me because of something that we've been planning for a year. We've been planning this very cool thing that no one's thought about, but it's going to shake up Kickstarter for a little bit. And people are going to be mad at me. Like that's stuff because I've got these really good ideas because stuff, but it's not what I want to be. I want to be a writer and I want to be known for my writing. I want to do that. And how do you do that? And also be respectful to your giftings, right? Like just because I want to do that, like if I'm good at something, well, I do that. So I don't know. I'm still trying to balance all that out. We even looked at this year, there's a couple people who submitted to us, like, what does that look like? When it's not me, my wife and Jerome are doing stuff, what do we do? And hopefully I get to a point where I can kind of level up and there'll be room in the Orange Cone catalog to help other people grow. And maybe I'll do a book to keep it going. But right now we're just trying to figure that out. And I've got a lot of direct market stuff coming next year. How does that balance? I don't know any of that stuff, guys. Like it's a mess, but I'll figure it out.
you just need to start leveling up to get that minion status so that you can get the other people doing it for you.
Right. Exactly.
Turn off the Simpsons. Get them to work.
Right.
But I think that's everybody's dream right now. But just to one last thing on the Granite State Punk, or at least from me, is these are, like you said, one shots. Now, do you have more in the pipeline, or is it just the 2 for now? Or
I actually plan on doing 4 at least. Now, this is the first book I've ever said this to. Like, I don't plan on stopping, assuming I can afford it, assuming as I can get it good, because I really like it. I've always been a huge fan of John Constantine, and I feel like I'm writing that young punk rock John Constantine.
I was actually thinking that this kid could definitely be a nice Americanized version of John Constantine for sure. And I was thinking Constantine had the punk band in his youth. Which for the trivia for the episode, does everybody remember the name of the band?
Oh, no.
I actually put notes on this. Mucous Membrane is the name of John Constantine.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, I actually thought about that. But then we were talking about, well, we shouldn't talk about mashing up Buffy and stuff. And I'm like, well, I shouldn't make mention of it. But since you brought it up,
no shame.
It's heavily influenced, but the way I tell it, because it doesn't tell like a Constantine story, right? He's always the smartest guy in the room because of what he's doing, not because of the dialogue. Where I do the unreliable narrator part, right? Like, and I get to play with that. And there's stuff I'm going to do that makes it very different in the future.
Yeah, right. And I got to say, I love the breaking the fourth wall and addressing the reader directly is fabulous. I like just his smarmy attitude, talking right at you, and I'm like that. I'm all for that. So I really appreciate that tone you have with it.
That's one thing. So I recently did that. Worked with you guys on that mashup print with Lyle. Actually, I have that first screen. I have not been good at showing stuff on screen, but so this mashup, I drew Link and punked it up. But the I wanted to add quotes onto it because I think that most like punk art and like the work juxtaposition of the words and pictures is like comics. I think that it just works well together. So I like to have words on there. So I when I picked out the quotes, I was like looking back through it, some of the scenes that I liked, and the one that stuck out to me was the one where he mentions that he watched a lot of wrestling as a kid, and I liked that scene because just like the punk rock rebel, like it was just cracked me up. He's like tells his parents suck it and runs away from the witches, like.
I'm trying to when like TV does punk, not like stuff like SLC Punk, which he's clearly in the scene, but when someone tries to represent punk, they always try to make them like super edgy. But what punk is, when you ever get a punk kid agitated, they're just ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. They'll do like a DXX, or like they'll quote, the Misfits, or they'll quote a Johnny Rotten quote. And you're just like, what are you doing? Like, stop. Like, and that's what I love about punk rock. Like, we so rebel against all thing trademarks, but we wear as much of it as we can. Like, as many brands as we can.
Last night, the Boll Weevils, Dwayne is on stage and he's ranting against commercialism and all this, like why does everybody have all their stuff and all this? And then when he's done, he's like, by the way, we're selling a bunch of shit in the back of the room.
Perfect.
It's very tongue in cheek and very like he very much knew what he was doing. It was funny.
Yep.
It's so much part of the scene. So I wanted to write the realistic of a punk kid who grew up in the 90s. You know, he's got to say suck it, because that anything that rebels against systems, they're watching, right? So the Attitude Era is 100% a punk rock thing at the time. All my punk rock friends that I knew growing up all watched that shit and loved it because Stone Cold spoke to them because CM Punk wasn't around yet.
And D-Generation X.
Right, D-Generation. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you are a wrestling fan, I've noticed online in the past.
Yeah, I used to be a real wrestling fan. Now I just occasionally watch it. I'll watch the Big Four, the Royal Rumble, and I'll watch an occasional episode to catch up. But I love storytelling and storytelling in unique ways. You know, like comic books, like wrestling, anything that tells stories in a non-traditional way. Like I love. You know, the movies that I resonate to are, you know, the Quentin Tarantino movies or SLC Punk or, you know, TV I watch, Mr. Robot. So I love things that they're taking stories and they're twisting them in a weird way.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So we're winding down soon, but Halloween's coming up.
Yeah.
So we thought we might talk about some old Halloween favorites. Is there? So first off, your last couple books between Voodoo Nations and Granite State Punk. I don't know, those are your last two now. Well, Cthulhu also. Like they got the horror thing in them. Like you've definitely dipped more recently into horror than you had previously. Is there a horror film or director or somebody that you find inspiration from, or something that you loved like your whole life that?
Yeah, you know, old horror I loved. You know, Nightmare on Elm Street was my dude. I'm a Freddy guy, Freddy kid all the way. You know, but I watched all of them from Sleepaway Camp to Jason to Halloween, all that stuff. And then for modern horror, I really love the Insidious series. Like I love Insidious. I think it's a great series. Again, you know, taking the horror thing out of the elements, the kid who's possessed, it's the family that's possessed, it's the individual person instead of the house or whatever. But I'll watch multiple horror movies a year, month, whatever. I'm not like one of those horror fanatics. Like I don't go to, like we have Halloween Horror Nights that's here. Like people go there every weekend. I don't have like a Child's Play doll, but I can tell you every Child's Play movie, and I've watched every single one of them all the time. But yeah, I love horror. I love the fighting against. It's one of the few things left in this world where it's good versus evil, right? It's always good versus evil. You don't root for you never root for someone who has any evil intent, right? Like, so it's really interesting when you watch it, especially when you watch like something like The Purge, right? The minute someone does something you don't agree with, you're against that guy in The Purge, which is weird, like, because it shouldn't be like that. Like for me, did you see the latest Purge, the Texas one?
Not yet.
So the latest Purge is Texas one. Unfortunately, it's the last Purge movie before that, they stopped the Purge. That was the big thing. And then apparently a new, like 4 years passed, and then a new election happens, and they just bring it back. I was super excited that movie because they didn't say that like in any of the previews. I thought it was just Texas going, no, fuck that, we're still doing the Purge, and that's so Texas. And I was but yeah, and I think the last horror movie I saw the last what's his name? He did Get Out. He's done
Nope.
From Jordan Peele.
Yeah. Jordan Peele. I mean, he's creating.
I haven't seen Nope yet, but he is amazing.
Yes, agreed.
He's creating amazing things and not giving you answers. I love stuff that doesn't give you answers.
Yeah,
that's why he was perfect for that Twilight Zone series.
Yeah.
I only watched the first season of his on there. I think he's got two now.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, they were really good. Like I was really digging those, and I loved his comedy before that. So I think he's another one that has jumped genres and been amazing at it.
Yeah, I mean, I followed. So growing up, this is probably going to I'm going to probably lose backers for this. I was a huge fan of Dawson's Creek. I love Dawson's Creek because I wanted to be a filmmaker, so I like wanted to be Dawson. I was always getting cheated on, so I was like, yeah, I totally get this show. Like, I'm just a nice guy. Everyone's fucking me over.
You just didn't want to wait for your lives to be over.
I just didn't. The only reason why I watched it is because he wrote Scream. The only reason why it was a heart. I was like, it's got to be good. He wrote Scream, and Scream is the best movie ever.
5 seasons in, waiting for that twist, and just never came.
Not a single murderer.
One of these days, it's coming.
I mean, what are we waiting for? Their life to be over, and it's not there yet.
Never did get that satisfaction, did you?
Right.
I think in the horror thing, I don't have anything specific, but all I could think of when we were starting to talk about it is I found a wonderful website called, I think it's doesthedogdie.com. And it's it's amazing how many like movies, like you could kill, a murderer could kill everybody on screen the entire time. But if I see them kill a dog, I'm like, no, I need to turn this off. I can't do it. So it's nice that it's like it's a little quick reference. You can be like, okay, dog survives. We're good. We can watch this movie. So
at least John Wick got that over with really early.
Yeah.
I saw a whole bunch of that for Prey. Like everyone watched Prey for a minute, saw that the dog was in a bad situation, was like, nope, I'm out. I'm like, keep watching, the dog's fine.
Yeah. And I think that might be the one where I looked it up because I think somebody mentioned it on that, and I was like, I got to check this out. And
I got to be careful.
Yep.
Predator is a weird one in terms of horror to me, where I love the Predator movies.
Right.
Even like 70% of them aren't good, but I still love them.
Oh, yeah, you gotta watch them anyway. But
the thing that is weird to me is that it's like Travis was saying about rooting for the bad guy. With Predator, they always lose. It's like, why is that alien even scary? He comes down and gets killed every time. It's weird that it's like this series of movies about the ones that suck. Like, I want to see the ones that are badass now.
That's why I really like the Batman Predator crossover. You ever read that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So where in the first one, like he's like, all right, you won, here you go, and leaves. And then in the second one, he brings his son to fight Robin.
Right. I forgot about that.
That first one was beautiful, like start to finish, the artwork and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those DC Dark Horse things back in the day were fabulous.
Those things are. Have you ever read the Alien Stormwatch crossover?
No, I forgot about that.
So if you could ever get it in like $1 bin or whatever, it's in continuity. The aliens win and kill a whole bunch of them. The next issue of Stormwatch, they're legitimately dead. I thought that was the best.
That's great.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah. That never happens. That's amazing.
There were stakes. That's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about you, Eric? What do you got for horror movies?
Oh, I was always I was big into the Amityville series.
Okay.
Like actually, I went to New York for a concert a few years ago, and I'd never been to New York City and stuff. So we actually went to Jersey for the concert. It was my birthday. We went to New York City for my birthday the next day, and then as it was getting later in the day, I was like, Amityville's around here. Like, I need to go to Amityville. So we drove out to Amityville and we found the house and stuff, and like it was creepy, like just going to Amityville. Like it's a perfectly normal place, but having seen all the movies and stuff. But Amityville is one of my favorites. And then the Halloween series. Speaking of series where 90% of them suck, I still always loved Michael Myers. And
it's funny though, because they, some of them were iffy, but 4 and 5, as much as people deride a lot of the stuff in that, they were building a new mythology, and I actually respected that they were kind of making him a different character. There was something else going on. There was a mystery man in the background. And then they came out with the next one, and my buddy and I, for years in between the two that came out, we were like, okay, this is what's going to happen. No, this is what's going to happen. Then it came out, and it was just god-awful druid bullshit, and we were like, and they just abandoned.
Is that the one
everything.
with the cameras, or with the with the reality show thing?
No, there was one before that where I think I can't remember if like Paul Rudd might have been in it. It was horrible. But at any rate, the 4 and 5 I actually enjoyed. And then, you build up in your head, as a writer, you're like, this is what's going to happen. No, this is not what's going to happen, and that's going to suck.
I don't know why, but Michael Myers was always on the bottom of my stack. Like it was Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers. Like I always like in Leatherface, I was like, oh yeah, he made movies too.
Yeah, Freddy was definitely top tier for me too.
I think that ever since I don't remember which one it was, might have been even the first one where he had the hypodermic needles on his hands. That I'm not a needle person, so I think that fucked me up on that one.
Yeah, I think that was I don't think that was the first one. Maybe it was.
I was gonna say third originally.
Yeah.
It might have been Dream Warriors.
Yeah, I think it's either Dream Warriors or it's 3 or 4. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been where I kind of dipped from that one, but
I will say, since I didn't actually put a movie out earlier, like the Evil Dead stuff was always
yes,
Bruce Campbell, and like this, you can discount the first one completely, but Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness were just like, I obviously love like horror and comedy, so the two mashed together was perfect for me.
Yeah.
So
along those lines, kind of is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive.
Yes,
loved that as in high school. Like that was, it didn't have to be around Halloween. It was whenever we would throw that thing on. Like
God, yeah, the rat monkey and all the like
the lawnmower scene. Like, oh man.
Yeah, and if you're talking to any horror guy and you talk about the bowl of soup scene, everyone's gonna know what the fuck you're talking about. So yeah,
well,
so gross.
I was a huge fan of Poltergeist.
Yes,
yeah,
especially the scene where he's picking the zit and pulling off his face, and like being a teenager watching that, and you're like, so maybe I shouldn't touch my face. They keep telling me not to touch my face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happens. Damn it. Yeah. Part 2 actually scared the crap out of me too, and that tequila worm scene was nuts. Yeah.
No, I huge fan of the Poltergeist series. I love that stuff.
Awesome. I think my internet might be acting wonky. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, you're
so
fine.
Far, so good.
Okay.
The Screaming Chucky, I've always liked Chucky. And even I like Chucky growing up now even further. Like once I've talked, because if you think of Chucky, he's always been able to like evolve to what like horror is at the time and then bring himself back to like, all right, take me seriously again. And I love that because he's the only one who's been able to successfully do it, right? Once you put Jason in space and in Manhattan, like you lost him.
I'm not going to lie to you that the space one was like, it was horrible, but it was delightful at the same time. The holodeck part was freaking hilarious. So it's like, again, I like that little bit of humor tinge to things. And I think going back to the Chucky thing, the TV series has been wonderful. It's just like the humor in that has just been on point. It's been wonderful. So.
Well, and they're really good in the Chucky series of playing because it's all done by the same guy, which is great. Yeah. The same guy's done the whole SPAC, which is amazing as a writer.
Yeah, it is.
Do that. But you had the one like the mid-series with the girl in the wheelchair. I can't think of which one it was, where you thought it was a reboot, and it wasn't. He ripped off the suit that was on top of him, and it's like, oh look, I'm still messed up from all the stupid times.
Yep.
And it just made sense. Chucky, what was great about Chucky too is like in the third movie when he's just like, I'm not going to go after this fucking kid anymore. There's other kids. Like just the bad guy just makes me so feel good. When you look at Michael Myers, he's like, no, I'm still mad at Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, no. How dare she like pay attention to her boyfriend? I'm not over it.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, man, this has been a lot of fun. You want to do one final pitch for Granite State Punk?
Yeah.
Graphic for you.
You want to live free or die. You want to learn more about this series. You want to get it before it becomes a corporate sellout because it sold out to the man of Black Caravan and Scout. Please pick up Granite State Punk, granitestatepunk.com. You can get issue 1. And then you get the spinoff, Granite State Punk Breaking Edge, right now, very, very affordable. And like all Orange Con projects, you're going to get it very fast. We always complete. I just got the last page from Patrick today. So it is right on par to be finished by the time the Kickstarter is done.
That's awesome.
And one last thing, you have something going on with Drumsticks of Doom with that as well, right?
Yeah, we have two crossover prints. So we have a prints on print. Eric has been part of both Granite States. He did a cover for issue 1 that very few people got to see because it's a Substack.
Nice.
I had to look it up. There's only 12 of those. What I love about that is I go, "Hey Eric, can you draw something like this?" And he was like, and he just drew it. He was like,
the communication was a little bit weird on that one, and then I finished it, and then Travis was like, "That's not what I was looking for, but I still like it." I was like, "Oh, good."
yeah. I said, "Hey, we want to get the same kind of feel as the cover," and he literally did the cover in his style, like Patrick's
awesome.
art with his art, which is great, and Patrick loves it. And there's
I'm glad because I felt weird about it afterwards. So I'm glad that he wasn't like, "What the fuck did that guy do?"
And we only printed 12 of those. That was the early Substack before people really got the Substack thing of it. And I think I sent you like 4. Yeah. I've got 1. Patrick's got 1. So literally, not many people have that book.
You guys need to sell out soon so I can sell these bitches. I'm sitting on a gold mine.
It is the lowest print run of all the books. It is the lowest print run, I think, of all my books. So there's that. There's the print that he showed earlier. If you back Bell and that, you get that. If you back Drumsticks of Doom, which is a great book, I'm shocked that it's not funded. I don't know what's going on over there.
I know. It looks so wonderful.
It's so good. Like, I read the first issue. It was a lot of fun. I don't know what's going on at all. But if you back that, you also get another you get a pick that will be a reversal pick on both of our books.
Very cool.
I can't wait to get those because I'm a backer on all 3 of those books.
Nice.
Ditto. Yep.
So, but yeah, the Granite State, the one that you did, I'm going to make it a flip. So I just announced that we're doing the regular art before you mugfight it. So it's going to be a flip. You'll get a print of both. So you'll see the regular and then you'll see the yours.
Nice.
It's cool.
Cool. It's awesome.
I'd give 2 separates, but most people throw their prints away. Let's be honest. So I'm not.
Mine end up in a box that I have full of stuff that I don't know. Maybe one day I'll regift. But I love things like, it's funny. I was actually just looking at it today when I pulled out Granite State Punk. I kept all the extras in the back for that one. Usually I just toss them in the back. So that's kudos to you guys that made me. The patch on there is funny because I was looking around the room yesterday, and there's not as many of the guys with the jackets with the patches, but there's a few of them that were at that show in particular. And I was just thinking that it would be fun to put together a jacket full of patches for like fake punk bands and musicians, like from the comics and stuff.
That actually would be dope. Like, take all comics, just start making patches, and then they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of that band. Oh, they're great."
Yeah. I've never really been great at when me, John, and Ben talk, they're a little deeper than me. I know some things, but I'm a little more mainstream with some of my picks. And so I've never been one that could really hold a great conversation alone, like regarding like smaller bands and stuff. There's a ton that I love, but I'm not as good at that. And so it's just like, it'd be funny to have that, and nobody knows any of those bands. It's like I'm super deep.
You would be the coolest guy in the room. Like, you would be,
always.
You'd be like, "Oh, damn!" And make sure it's denim and sleeveless. That's important.
Well, Travis,
couldn't have bought it. Yeah,
this has been great, Travis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
I love that we didn't really talk about it much. We talked about the lore of the book, but one of the things that I love in stories is some good background and lore, and I can't wait to dig more into that with the second issue. Really looking forward to that. So,
I'm still waiting for my blister. When's it coming?
Yes, man, I have them in my room right now, and I just got the boxes in. I have to do a drawing for my raffle, and then I'm gonna start packaging them up this week.
Okay. I'm excited. I'm ready for it.
Of all the things that I want to rip off on Orange Cone, one thing I want to rip off on is getting my shit out right after the Kickstarter. That is not the case this time, but
well, to be fair, I have changed my rules. So my rule now is I have to send up the digital before I launch the next thing, and that's only because of the paper shortage. Like the paper shortage, like if I would follow the paper shortage, I'd only be able to do like 2 or 3 books a month, $3 a year, just because of how long it's taking. And then we just had the hurricane. I don't know if you know, my printers, Comic Impressions, they're total. They're destroyed.
Oh,
geez.
they're not 100% destroyed, but they lost a building. They had to pull up all the carpets. Like, they're a mess. They're going to take a while to get back in printing. So
wow.
These shortages are a real thing. Like right now, I know I was just wrapping up the show, so we'll have to probably re-wrap up the show. But I started getting Image Comics has The Furthest Place from Here comic was coming with a 7-inch record.
yeah,
And so I had my shop getting that. Well, they got the first one. A few months later, they got the second one. And now they're saying it could be several months before the third one is done because of the vinyl shortages. And meanwhile, the series, I think it's on like issue 10 or something now.
Yeah,
I haven't read any of it.
The
because
first trade's already out.
behind. I didn't want to get too far behind. So I ended up buying the trade paperback in the meantime while I'm waiting for my single issues to come in with the records.
yeah. I couldn't even get it because of the shortage.
I think a lot of shops were just substituting the non-vinyl copies. Like that's what mine did. Is they
tried to do that to me, and I was like, "I'll wait."
Like my problem is I never go in, so it's like 2 months later I got a giant box, and I'm like, maybe it's in there. I don't know. But yeah, I was kind of hoping that they'd at least release some of the music digitally or something, so that we could have a companion piece.
I don't think they've done that at all for the ones that didn't come out.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that, so I've been looking around. So if I see it, I'll let you know.
I think it's partly to do with the rights because he's got like he doesn't own he only owns the vinyl rights of it, so he'd have to go to every individual person.
I don't know if it's the case on all of the ones, but the first record, I think both of them were cover songs too.
Yeah. A lot of them are covers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which, speaking of, I'm going to see Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
Yeah, all cover songs.
I'm very jealous. I always wanted to see them.
Never got a chance to see them.
Chicago.
Can't wait. So
they're
excited.
on my list.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your show.
I love that. Normally, when someone asks me what my favorite punk band is, I say Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and you'd expect someone to get mad, but no one gets mad. They're just like, I get it.
They're just
Totally get it. Yeah. I remember back when it was Napster and Kazaa and all that crap. That was what I used to search for all the time was punk rock covers. And
you're right. I used to do that back then too.
Yeah. So I totally get it.
That's funny. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Travis.
Yes, thank you.
Don, it's good to have you back. Hopefully the three of us will be back next time.
Knock on wood. Ships that pass in the night.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for checking out the show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with some more. Muckspot.com. I'll post Travis's link with everything. So if you're watching this somewhere and it doesn't have Travis's link, hit me up on social media and say, where the fuck is Travis's link? All right, everybody, take care.
Have a good night.